Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames and messieurs, boobies and zadies, welcome to one of the final panels of the day. My name is Professor Sean Wise, and I know that sounds like a Silver Age superhero, Doctor Strange, Mr. Fantastic, Professor Wise, but I am pleased to chair this panel made up of various creators and talking about the impact of October 7th on them, on their work, and what they want to accomplish. Now, because you've chosen to be here, I know you've all read the biographies of our participants, so as to not bore you and reread it, I've decided to ask each one of them to start us off by sharing some fact about their career that we don't know. So Uri, you are the elder statesman of the group with the most success. What's something we don't know about Uri Fink?
I think I don't think anybody knows anything about Uri Fink here, no?
Well, let's fix that problem.
Well, I'm really good with yo-yo.
He's very good with a yo-yo.
I didn't even know that.
No, he was in the IDF with Yoda throwing.
Yeah, sometimes when I didn't think of an idea, I used to just go around and play with a yo-yo. That's what was a technique to think of ideas for my comic strips. That was, that's something nobody knows.
Yo-yo inspired art. Sir?
I would say probably my book that got published in Israel when I was 17 with Uri, so no one knows about it. But when I was 17, I did a book about the Israeli superhero who was a real. He was like kind of, what's the word in English? Like someone who just doesn't want to do anything, who was like had the comfy job in the army, and so yeah, we did a book about it, and
yeah, I did the layouts and Koren because I don't know how to draw properly. That's how I draw superheroes. You see, it's not my forte. So I did the layouts and Koren did the actual drawing.
It was actually the return of Sabraman, but as in retirement age, and he just really doesn't want to fight crime and doesn't want to do anything.
I can understand that after COVID.
The thing is, I remember that we did the whole book was about the army, actually, about the Israeli army, and Koren did it when I was 17, and then when he joined the army, I remember you called me and you said, "Uri, finally I understand the book.
yeah.
Finally I understand what you're talking about, the army."
Nothing gets done, and
nobody works, and everybody just wants to go home. Yeah, that's.
Our third panelist, unfortunately, had his flight canceled as Israel needs him on the ground, but he is coming to us from Tel Aviv. His name is Omri Rose, and he is not only a writer, but a producer, an actor, a voice actor. You may know him as the voice of Cyclops, many more things. But tell us something we don't know about you, Omri. They did read your bio.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Nigeria, Switzerland, Israel, Kenya, and Holland. And that was all before going back to Israel and doing my military service. So that really informed a lot of my worldview as it would for any child. And I think that multiculturalism and exposure to all these different cultures and the accent set me on a path that really has continued to bear fruit till this day in many different endeavors, kind of all of my curiosities. And I think that's kind of why maybe I'm so spread everywhere, just because I was in so many different places and constantly changing interests and environments. So that really informed a lot. Yeah.
I just want to tell our newcomers, don't feel bad for being late, but we've got lots of seats near the front. Now, unlike most panels where the moderator would take up a lot of space asking really intelligent questions, I thought we should stop and put a little context to all of this. I know that we've all experienced life post October 7th, but as a creator, it has a deep impact on how you produce work and how you enjoy work. So I've asked each of our illustrious panelists to talk a little bit about a project that they've done, a contribution of work they've done post October 7th, to give us a little starting ground, not just to ask questions, but to talk about it. So as always, I go with maturity. And
Hey,
sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm Sean Wise.
okay.
I write books about business mostly. In my nighttime, I pose as a superhero. I wrote Echoes of October with Omri because my university is overrun with hate, and my classrooms get death threats and bomb threats and knives in the podium and children dressed up as Hamas. And my wife won't let me engage with them because I'll end up hurt. So instead, I thought, why don't I put myself in something I could do? And we created Echoes of October, which we'll talk about in a bit. But that's my background and how I ended up being here. So now on to real artists. Tell us about
Okay.
your work.
Ever since October 7th, of course, living in Israel, it affected me most. Also being a political cartoonist and all the things that I do. But while we were, the amazing thing was immediately everybody was immobilized to help, to do things. It's really impressive. I never saw Israeli society like this. And also that was what happened to me and my fellow cartoonists. Everybody wanted to do something. We want to publish cartoons. We wanted to do something. So one thing we did is we went around the hotels where the people who were evacuated from the cities were staying, and we were drawing them. We're drawing them just to give them a good time, to entertain them while they were sitting there. And during one of those trips on the bus with my colleagues, suddenly I got this idea. I said, why don't we? And we started to hear all those amazing stories of heroism from what happened October 7th, people really doing things that are extraordinary. And I said, why don't we do a comic about it? Why these stories can be immortalized in comic form and be, and get the right treatment. And so I put the idea to my colleagues. I said, let's do it, and let's do it in France. I don't know, I told it to a lot of people today, and people don't know that France is the place for comics. I don't know if people know that. France is the capital, is the Mecca of comics. That's the place where they treat comics with respect on any genre. And I said to them, why don't we do that? We sell to a French publisher the idea of doing an anthology with those stories. We'll take all the best cartoonists in Israel, the best comic artists, and each one will get a story. We had cooperation with a reporter. She gathered all the best stories. Everyone had to choose one. I ruined a lot of relationships with my colleagues by not choosing them. A lot of people are angry at me in Israel, but I chose Koren because he's the only one who doesn't live in Israel that I chose because he's so good. And I chose the story of Rachel. Go back. Of Rachel and the cookies. I don't know if you heard the story of this woman. Rachel Edry was held hostage in her house for a long time, but she managed to survive by manipulating the terrorists, giving them cookies until she was rescued. And she was very much idolized in Israel. She became a hero. She became they made graffiti about her and a lot. And I took this story because I'm usually not doing serious comics like this. I'm usually doing funny stuff.
This is her here.
Yeah, that's me. That's the whole point of this book, was for each cartoonist to meet and be there. That's what we can be in Israel, is that we can actually be in the places it happened, talk to the people. That was the point. So this is me going to Ofakim, where she lived, and this is her son who rescued her. That's where it all happened. And here you can see the bullet holes next to the stairway. And yeah, and I thought the story would be amusing in some way, because cookies and she was, but go back a little. But I noticed that when we visited the house where she doesn't live there anymore. She was living with her son. She couldn't go in. You see her sitting there. When I was doing the research, she was sitting there and she refused to go in. I'll go forward again. And that's what I used for this picture. You see her as Wonder Woman there under Omri. That's a graffiti in Tel Aviv. There's a graffiti in Tel Aviv of her as Wonder Woman, but actually she's not a Wonder Woman. She's a very traumatized lady and very traumatized woman. And the sad ending is that her husband, after a few months, he died from a broken heart. Really he suddenly just died. And this is the sketches I did after visiting her. This is the sketches. That was. I love these sketches because they're the true feeling of I don't know, that was the breakthrough for me to break the story into a comic form. Also, when I met her, she told the story. She said, I came into the house and I found 5 Rottweilers waiting for me in the house. So I thought, oh, maybe because I didn't know how to draw the terrorist. I mean, I didn't want to draw these ugly, anti-Semitic drawings of monsters. So I thought maybe Rottweiler is a good idea. But then I said, Rottweilers are terrible dogs, but they're still man's best friend. So I just drew them as these, here you can see all those top references of Rachel, that people did tattoos of her, memes, all sorts of products. And I thought this would be a funny story, but it wasn't, you see. And then here you can see more of the sketches. That's her son, the one who actually was part of the police. And that's the finished work without the text. Everything is done on the iPad. But as you can see, I just did them as these without faces. I didn't want to deal with how to draw evil, very specifically. And you have another slide? I don't remember.
Nope, it's somebody else.
Yeah, somebody else. So this is the project. I brought it here. This is the only copy I brought because French comics are very nice, but they're also very heavy. I didn't want to carry so much. And
And the name of the book?
The name of the book is Au cœur de 7 octobre, which means in the heart of 7th of October. And I'm looking for a publisher. Is there a publisher in the house by any chance? No, I'm not looking. Actually, it's Edition Delcourt is a very serious comic publisher in France. But if you have an idea of who will translate it, just let me know and I'll make the connection. But it's very important that these stories will be as in many places in the world as possible.
Thank you for sharing. I want to ask our next panelist to give you his perspective on a work that he's done since October 7th.
So Uri approached me to pick, there was kind of a list of stories at the time, and each artist and writer could have picked a story to develop. And a lot of the stories were really, really sad and kind of depressing. And as it was incredibly tragic event. And I kind of gravitated towards the more maybe uplifting one where this woman Inbal, she was kind of on the, she was in the kind of, I don't know what to call it in English, but the unit that is in a kibbutz to, in case something happens, to defend it. And she and the other group of people from the kibbutz, because they were so, did their job so well and were able to do everything kind of improvised, and they ended up saving the kibbutz Nir Am with the help of I think the army police or something like that. But I gravitated towards that because I felt like that was about kind of like the Israeli spirit and this kind of resourcefulness and kind of figuring things out in the heat of the moment, and just kind of like the positive aspect of Israel, I think, where there's like these resourceful people, these people that made it out of nothing. And so I kind of gravitated towards that. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to do it because I didn't do, other than this, I didn't really do anything that was specifically about October 7th. I kind of, other than my internal like processing in my head, I really didn't do any cartoons that I posted on Instagram or anything, because I feel like the social networks were like it was very poisonous at the time. And I didn't want to deal with the vitriol or whatever that would come from that. So my way of channeling, feeling that I did something, was through doing this story for Uri's anthology.
Thank you. So before I turn it over to Omri to talk about Echoes of October, I'll give you full disclosure. By day, I'm a professor, but by night, I pretend to be a comic book writer. Mm-hmm. And on my campus, we have encampments and death threats and children dressing up as cosplaying Hamas. And the Jewish faculty is very much under threat. And so I can't engage on campus. I can't rebut on campus because it ends up in a shouting match until someone's stabbed. And that's a real life Toronto, Canada, everyday reality. So one of the things that I thought we could do was to write about these stories and give people an understanding that was deeper than maybe what they're getting from TikTok or the BBC. And so to do that, I didn't want to do it with my voice as a Canadian snowflake. I have a very different perspective. And so I went out and recruited 4 writers from different groups, 4 people to give impact. And I'm pleased to say we found very vocal, although different perspectives, participants. We're producing the book under a pseudonym because some of the participants, particularly those in Gaza, didn't feel their colleagues would appreciate their perspective. The book Echoes of October tells the story of 4 11-year-olds in the 364 days before their father was killed on October 7th. And although the children aren't real, all the stories are real, all the facts that happen are real, all the perspectives are real. And so to get the real Israeli perspective, I reached out to the greatest creative person I know, who's Israeli at the time, and that was Omri. Omri, how did you come to the project? What can you say about your contribution or what Echoes is?
Well, I think you presented it very well in how I came about. You know, you approached me with this, and I was immediately quite taken by the cover image. As you see, it wasn't as it is now, and this is also still a work in progress. But this idea of these 4 children standing with that title, you know, that today my father was killed, as kind of the first page, it's like, wow, it's a very powerful moment to just be confronted with. And you know, I was in Israel October 7th, and I had already worked on another project relating to October 7th, so I wasn't initially sure I wanted to take on quite another one to delve into it. But the more Sean and I spoke about it, the more I realized how important it was to have an authentic voice on some of these stories, and how I could contribute to it. Because initially, as I said, I was a bit hesitant, but then, you know, we started working together and developing the whole narrative arc of the character, and shaping how they all come together, because their lives. So it's an Israeli Jewish kid, a Druze Israeli, a Christian volunteer whose father's working in the kibbutzim helping Gazans, and then a Gazan girl, Muslim Gazan girl. So, you know, we have these very diverse characters, and throughout the story, their lives do cross and intersect. And that was important as well for us to show. And yeah, that developed from there. And as I said, I did work on another thing prior to this, which was a feature film about, I'll just mention it in brief, but the lives of Alon Shamri's, Yotam Chaim, and Samer Fawad al-Talalka, who were the 3 Israeli hostages, if you remember, who managed to escape and survived in Gaza for several days before tragically they were killed by the Israeli military, unfortunately, misidentified. And, you know, I went and spoke with the families, and we put this whole film together, which is meant to be shooting in December now, but that was a very heavy piece to work on, and it's all told through their eyes. So again, taking that parallel with Echoes was again telling a story through the eyes of a number of characters directly, and it was heavy. But this with the children's approach to it, and then the fact that we aren't going forward, but we're going backwards. It's the year leading up to October 7th, and we kind of see the lives. You know, you're in there in the living rooms of these people, and the power of just seeing people. And I think we'll probably address this later in this session, but so much of what has happened since October 7th has been to dehumanize everything. It doesn't matter what side, but everything is dehumanized. There's nothing human about any of it. You know, we just see scenes of destruction, and we're either, again, both sides are either victims or, you know, oppressors. And the ability with Echoes of October to sit in living rooms and have a kid walk home from school and interact with their parents, it humanizes. And that's the most important thing that we can do, I think, in our lives, is to understand that we're all complicated, messy human beings. But it's important to realize that, because the second you make anyone an enemy for whatever reason, and you paint people in just black and white, there's no going back. So, yeah.
I think all three panelists have indicated what they hoped might come out of the project or what good might come out of it. But I want to start a little earlier. What impact did creation in this circumstance have on you? How are you different? I know for myself, I felt very frustrated and very much unable to solve the problem and unable to explain perspective. And yet after writing this, I feel like there is something to contribute and there is a way to do something. What were you hoping you would take away from the project, and what did you take away from the project? I'm going to start with Uri. Uri, excuse me.
As I said, I mean, the atmosphere in Israel, I don't know if Omri was there at the time, but it was like totally natural, totally, you have to do something. You have to do something.
Unity. Yeah.
You have to, you feel like you have to, I did everything. I mean, I did cartoons, political cartoons. I did, my comic strip was dedicated to try to encourage people. It was part of that, it was part of that. Just not to feel helpless, not to feel that you are just a spectator on this. I mean, a lot of my colleagues, there were some that were completely immobilized. They couldn't draw, they couldn't do anything. I was the opposite. I mean, I just had to draw, I had to do things, I couldn't sit still. But what I wanted to achieve with this book, I mean, I sympathize with what Omri said about humanizing. I mean, I didn't want a hasbara book. It's not the point of this book is not to show how we were wronged or how they killed us and everything. The point of this book was to show humanity and perseverance and to give inspiration to people. And the only not human people there are just the terrorists. Those people I don't think they can be humanized. But that was my goal in this book. I mean, it's not so. Even some of my colleagues, they did pictures, they did cartoons, and they were so bloody and horrible. So I called them, said, "Is everything okay?" Because it was so, Guy Morad did some really hard stuff, and I said, "Everything okay?" I said, "No, it's okay. Just illustrations. Don't worry about me." So it's all part of. I mean, these couple of while you were here enjoying the first JewCE festival, we had other things in mind. So that period is like totally different state of mind than ever in the history of Israel, I think, for me.
What were you hoping from your story contribution, and what did you actually take away?
Well, being former Israeli that lives in the U.S. for many years now, when it happened, I felt a sense of disconnect personally because, this is my country, this is where I grew up, and as heartbreaking as everything was, it was very hard for me to put myself, just feel that connection that you do feel in Israel. There's no way to escape it, like you sit, if everybody's glued to the news and you're feeling it and there's the alarms and the rockets falling and everything. And here you're nice and comfy and, you're safe relatively. And then, so for me, doing the story was a good way to just put myself in the shoes of someone who was there, someone who was on the verge, face to face with terror and could have been killed, could have had everybody in the kibbutz, whatever they did, could have had another massacre and another hundreds of people hurt. And so it was kind of like a way to meditate over it. But I also feel like it wasn't complete for me. I still have a lot of things I think about and a lot of things about my own relationship to it. And it wasn't a full outlet for that stuff. Yeah.
Omri, what did you take away from working on Echoes of October and working on the other work you did for the post-October 7?
It's, being here, as Uri said, there was this amazing spirit, and that is something that anyone who's been in Israel, and especially who's been in Israel during any kind of crisis will know, is that Israel is like family, for good or for bad. And whenever there's a tragedy or something in a family, they come together. And so there was this amazing energy in the country of everyone felt that they had to do something. I mean, it was really something to see. Literally, everyone was, trying to volunteer everywhere they could, donating this, driving, connecting, all this kind of stuff. And it was an amazing amount of energy that came from that. And to contribute to that in the ways that we as artists could by creating these pieces is also a way for us, I think, to feel like we're participating in the fight in our own way. We all have our own strengths in how we do that, but it's to be a part of that greater thing that we're involved in. So yeah, both of this project and the previous one allowed me to process a lot of the emotions around what was happening with October 7th as well. Sean, like you said, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world and in your university campus. And for me, having grown up in all these different places and having friends in all these different places, and I had shot a movie in Ukraine previously. And so when the conflict there happened, I see all the flags and all of this, and then suddenly Israel, and you don't see the same thing happening. And you go, well, wait a minute. So it's processing all of that. And there is nothing better, no better way to process than by doing, in my opinion. Wallowing or sitting and doing nothing sometimes is necessary, but I think the best way to heal and to just move forward is movement. And so movement in action in that sense. So yeah, that's how I feel that these pieces kind of help me process and heal and move forward. When I was first writing Stay Forte, which, I mean, the entire film basically takes place under Hamas captivity, where these guys are going through a brutal thing. I mean, I was distraught every day writing it, and just a lot of whiskey was consumed. But Echoes was cathartic because you go back and you kind of look at it from the child's perspective and the life of what could be and then what is. So yeah, it's a cathartic thing.
You mentioned post October 7th how Israel wasn't supported as, say, Ukraine was during their time of crisis. What role do you think, Omri, that graphic novels have going forward when we have perhaps lost the information war, where we're being overrun on social media? What role can graphic novels and stories play for our children and for the community at large?
I think by extension, if you think about art, my grandfather always used to say that Fiddler on the Roof was the greatest propaganda and tool of explanation that the Jews ever created, because you have all these people going to see a musical, and at the end, everyone's singing, Sunrise, Sunset, Anatevka, and they're leaving. You realize you just watched a show dealing with the pogroms and telling this history. And so in that similar way, positive representation in comic books and in all media, and then also telling specific stories is very impactful and powerful. And especially today, when everything is globalized and interconnected, if you are engaging with a comic book or a graphic novel or a podcast these days as well, those are usually solo experiences. And so the level of impact that can have, I think, is much higher in some ways, because you're sitting in your bedroom or in your living room or outside or wherever you are, and it's you and that medium that you're consuming, whether it's the physical graphic novel or comic or a podcast, and it's just you and that thing. No one else is there. You're not sharing it with a million people unless you're Instagramming yourself doing it. But that solo experience allows you to penetrate through all the noise if you get to it, right? If we're able to get to those people, if you're able to get to that solo experience. So I think there is the strength. We have to have excellent material, and we can't preach. No one likes to be preached to. So I think that's the role that comics can and hopefully should and will and do play for us post October 7th.
Your thoughts, Koren?
I mean, I'm a pessimist, so I don't know. I mean, it's like almost like the whale and the barnacle, where I feel like, you know, you have TikTok there and you see the people on the subway and they're all like, you know, engrossed with their phones. So it's really hard to compete with that. And we are using like this older medium, I don't know. But at the same time, if it gets through to someone, then that's great. And I think that, you know, the book, Uri said that the book is doing good in France. So people are reading it and people are getting to see, like you just said, Omri, that it's like a humanizing experience. It's like you get to see real stories of real people, and what actually happens, it stops being abstract and it becomes real stories. Like people really went through this. This is a real person. And I think that's the strength of comics, that it's a personal, intimate medium. And it's kind of like a documentary, but you know, you're sitting there silently with the story from the actual person. So maybe that's, in my mind, the strength of it.
What do you think going forward graphic novels can do for our community?
Well, as Koren said, I mean, a lot of people say, what's the point of a comic, of a comic of all things, a graphic novel, a graphic telling of the story. So as Koren said, it's a different medium. It's always justified to have, because what Koren said. I mean, I have nothing really to add to what Koren said. That it's an intimate art form, and it's something that you do with yourself. Something that it's a conversation between you and the artist and the writer. He takes you through this story and still you participate in it. It's not like when you're watching a video, you're like this, and everything is given to you. But in a comic, you participate and it's still a visual experience. So I think it's a different experience, and it's as important, you know, as any other, as a story. Stories are what makes us human, right? And these are stories that need to be told. So it's goes without saying that graphic novels are the best way to tell stories. We all agree on that, right?
We all agree with that. The 3-4 of us are all storytellers, but we're not the first telling stories to combat hate. There's a long history of comics, graphics as a form of not just satire, but a form of resistance, a form of rebellion. How did these early works, if at all, affect you? We're talking, Omri, about Mouse and Will Eisner's
I see the
work.
slide. Yeah, I see the slide.
As the elder statesman,
Oh, again, okay.
you have the
elder
longest
statesman-
perspective
What about
how these works led to where
well,
you are.
they are the pioneers. They are the pioneers. I mean, again, I think in France, I'm a frustrated Francophile. Doesn't speak French. You speak French, Mr. Canada?
Un petit peu.
Ah, petit peu. Okay, so
That just means I speak a little French.
thanks to my art teacher in Bezalel, he's called Michel Kishka, and I remember every lesson he used to bring us these enormous French comics, piles of French comics, and you saw that they deal with any subject, no problem whatsoever. But you Americans, yeah, wow, Will Eisner.
I'm not. Look at me. I'm not.
So happy if somebody deals with serious subjects with comics. But in France, it was always like that. I mean, it's not something new for them. So I guess these are stepping stones. Of course, the French are not as imperialistic culturally like the Americans. So the minute American products became more common in that field, you know, the American serious graphic novels became more common, it spread more all over the world, and even in Israel. Now it's more acceptable to do serious graphic novels. In Israel also, it's gone a long way since when I was a kid, but still I went to France because I knew it was the best. The artists will get paid properly, the production will be top notch. But these are stepping stones in that direction.
How do you feel that comics can follow the great tradition and help us?
I mean, I have not read the two on the right. I have read Mouse twice and actually reread it the studio I was working at, someone had discarded a copy of Mouse, and I was like, oh, it's a good time to reread it. And there's just no denying that it's a masterpiece, and it is amazing. And I agree that the French have done it, but not quite that way. And I think Art Spiegelman really, like, there's something here that is really incredible. And I think it set the tone for a lot of what we see today, because back then in the 80s when he did this, no one else was doing. I mean, Will Eisner tried to start making comics for adults, and then Art Spiegelman succeeded, so they kind of are related in that sense. And it's hard to top it because it is so seminal and so good. So I'm definitely not doing a Holocaust story anytime soon because I just can't top that. But moving forward, it's like, it's important stepping stones. Yeah.
One of the greatest, most sad parts has to do with after October 7th and the massive rise in anti-Semitism in everywhere but inside of Israel. And I wonder what role graphic novels from the diaspora or from Israel can play in the war of misinformation. For instance, here are some cartoons that are being published even in these days, and they're still playing to the tropes, they're still dehumanizing, they're still making the Jew the bad guy. So what can we do to help fight, not just misinformation, but using comic books as a weapon? What role, Omri, do you think we can have in a post-October 7th world where Israel has been painted as something it is not, in my opinion, and the world seems to not be understanding that? So what role do you think this could play, not just in Israel, but in the future of to fight anti-Semitism in the rest of the countries?
Well, I think we're seeing the role already. We're doing it. My fellow panelists here and throughout the whole event, Juice, you're seeing how we're fighting back in this medium. But unfortunately, in the arithmetic of the world, in the numbers games of it, we are at a disadvantage for sure. And the way that things can be proliferated, we're also at a disadvantage. So we have to be clever, as we always have. Necessity is the mother of creation, and we have to create impactful things. Previously you had the slide with Will Eisner and Sam Spiegelman's, and may we be so lucky that our pieces stand amongst them as pieces that are able to fight anti-Semitism. But the reason those pieces are there is not just because they exist, but because they were effective in existing, and they managed to reach audiences. And so, if we don't manage to reach any audience with what we do, unfortunately, we won't have as much of an impact. So yeah, it's a very difficult situation, and unfortunately, maybe like Koren said, that it's a bit pessimistic to say, but you see so much of this online of people just consuming this stuff. It doesn't help that major media outlets are also quick to just post Hamas facts and things, but we have to do the work and get quality rather than quantity, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. No, I agree completely. I mean, we have to keep doing it. There's no other choice. What can we do? The war in Gaza, is it already in English?
It's just come out.
Yeah.
Just come out.
Yeah, I was walking in the bookstore in France a month ago, where it just came out. So I saw this book standing like this in the shop, and I went to pick it up just to see it the first time. And the guy in the store, he took this in French, and you want to read about Gaza, read this, So
You know what? One of the positive things that many people have cited in a post-October 7th world is that Jewish communities have turned inwards to support each other in a way that they didn't feel was as necessary because they blended in. Your works are not one and done. You have a long history of contributing. What would you hope the people in the audience today could do for your works to move it forward? How could they help you to bring these stories to life? What's your request?
Find me a publisher in English.
Is there a publisher? Is there any English publishers here? Do I hear one? One, two. Any more
No.
realistic goals?
Just spread the word. Spread the word. Maybe there are. I think there are some pages. Spread the word that the book exists. Maybe show some panels from it. Follow me on Facebook. You can find the panels. Oh, Kermit. Okay.
It's the worst clicker in the world. There we go. You want to follow anyone here? I've put up their connect details.
I don't think that's the right Instagram. Okay, that's
That's the one you gave me,
really.
Yeah.
Okay.
unless there's another good-looking gentleman with that name. What would you
With the
hope
same shirt.
someone in the audience would be able to do?
Yeah, just keep spreading the word. Keep reading comics. Don't, put down the phone once in a while and read a book. Yeah.
Oh, if you use the phone to share
To read the
work,
book and
okay.
share.
Or that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Omri, do you have any thoughts to how people in the diaspora can support the works that you're creating?
I mean, everyone said it already, share the works, share with each other what you're doing, not even online, but just talk to people about what you're consuming. Talk to Sean. He'll tell you what we need for Echoes as it's developing.
Covers. We need guest cover artists. If anybody wants to contribute a cover to a graphic novel, now's the time. For those of you who are following along, I hope I've got these right. You may find Echoes of October. You can use the QR code. I would take a picture of that instead of trying to type it. This is what I found on the Amazon.com links. So I thought because of where we are, that would be good. I'm sure they're available in French and in other Amazon websites, but these might be the ones to support. I want to open it up to the floor, and I'm hoping that you will make up for my deficiencies by asking questions that you're more interested in hearing. There is a microphone because we are recording all of this. So it's not that we can't hear you because you're only a foot away, but so that we can get it for those recording. Wow, it's just like my first year class. Nobody wants to sit in the front row. Nobody wants to ask the first question. You can get a signed copy.
No, you can't. This is the only book I. Here.
Did you experience anti-Semitism in looking for a French publisher? I know you're not reading the French comics that are out there, not in
Not.
French.
Must say, I don't know what was the only display of any kind of really anti-Semitic was what I told you about the bookstore. It was so easy to find the French publisher. It was like the second one we approached. It was everything. We also did, if you come to my booth, we did an exhibition. I now have the position of being the chairman of the Israeli Cartoonist Association, which is really not as impressive as it sounds, because it's a job that nobody wants to do, and somebody has to do it. So I was, we organized, there was a festival. The French don't only respect comics, they also respect political cartoons. And there's a big festival in a town called Saint-Just, big cartoon festival, and we asked to do an exhibition about the October 7th cartoons. And they agreed. They were like that. And we displayed it there. And there were no really, I thought I would, get beaten up, shouting, well, nothing. And frankly, I'm a bit disappointed that nobody showed up today.
Uri will be available later if anyone wants to beat him up. He's basically soliciting assault.
No, really, I just, okay, no, but I thought really, I haven't really seen any really violent displays, but please, I believe you. I mean, it's not that I doubt you, but I haven't really experienced. Have you experienced anything really?
The only thing that I've experienced, and again, I on my social networks, I did not post anything specific about October 7th, but at some point I posted this illustration I did of an old Jewish bagel salesman, and there was just like this stream. Someone had posted it, I guess, somewhere of like anti-Semitic comments. And my wife saw it and she's like, wow, look at this. And I was like, I don't want to look at it. I just, closed it down and I didn't want to read it. But I was just like, this is like a totally innocuous picture of a Jewish bagel salesman from the turn of the century. So that got people
Maybe they
going.
really don't like bagels.
They don't like bagels, yeah. But,
Come on, who doesn't like bagels?
No, but online I've got plenty of hate.
Oh, so there you go. Something,
Online, yeah. But I wanted the real thing,
Yeah. It's a lot
I can
easier
see
to
the
bully
Empire State
people
Building
on the
one-
internet.
one.
A lot easier to bully on the
Yeah,
internet.
and the
Yeah.
internet, I got fights with colleagues from Jordan. They did some
Yes.
horrible things. There was a lot of this, but on real life, didn't get a chance yet.
Omri, you
Maybe
work
so.
with a lot of international players, so you have work with films in Israel and abroad and other projects.
Yeah.
What's your experience been? Any change in how your work is getting done?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's changed. I mean, as interestingly, Koren said you didn't post anything directly related to the 7th, and I get it. I understand, and but the fact of that is exactly kind of the issue, right? As I said earlier, when Ukraine happened, I happened to have, as I said, done a movie there, so I had a lot of Ukrainian friends and was more connected to it. But not just them and myself, but everywhere you turned, you saw a Ukrainian flag, and no one was really afraid of a Russian trolling them in response, or vice versa. And when this happened, not 3 weeks later, not 4 weeks later, not 6 months later, but the same day, people were still afraid to post. I got tons of messages from people in the first couple of days. Oh my God, we're so sorry. How can we help? Is there anything we can do? And one of the things that I said to the people who I felt were more genuine was, you're going to see things in a couple of days. Right now it's fine, but in a couple of days, you're going to see people posting things. Just be aware of that. Speak out. Do what you did with Ukraine, because these are people that were posting, and they didn't, most of them. So there's a difference. And you do have to make professional decisions every once in a while, in the sense that, do you present the fact that you're going to be an Israeli or working from Tel Aviv or any of these kind of things ahead of time? Because companies generally want to avoid any kind of strife, right? So if they can nip that in the bud, and they go, well, I can work with this person in Tel Aviv, or I can work with this person in Georgia. Well, this is going to cause me less headache potentially down the road. So yeah, those are these kind of decisions that you make. So in that regard, yes, working internationally with different people, I have certainly felt a difference in approach from different people, and have myself curbed how I present certain things. Yes.
Want to turn it back to the audience? We have a question up at front, and if you want to ask it, I can repeat it in case the runner doesn't get to you.
Yeah, I was looking for more about the decision and Echoes to voice to many different communities.
What a wonderful question.
And then just the second part of the question was just if any of the panelists want to talk about the opportunity for comics to kind of represent these the different sides that have been impacted.
Okay, I'll be happy to go first. When I wrote Echoes for the first draft, it wasn't being written for my side, if you have sides. It wasn't being written for the other side. It was being written for the 90% of Canadians who get their news from CBC, our national broadcaster, or from TikTok. and that they're being suckered into beliefs that make no sense and being told false facts. And so we wanted to tell the facts, but we were afraid it would be seen as Israeli propaganda if it was 3 Jews. And so I made the conscious decision to recruit people whose opinion differed from mine, but were still literate, still knowledgeable, and they rewrote certain sections. Some of those sections were incredibly offensive to me as a person, and that showed me it was working. That showed me that the goal of the book, to share truth, to show different perspectives, to find common ground from the eyes of 11-year-old children, which are pretty common around the world, right? What they want. That was a really hard decision to implement, finding someone who you could work with, finding someone who would work with you. In certain particulars, we had to put contractual terms in not to disclose their names. They were afraid that other people in their communities wouldn't appreciate their participation. And my wife is still making us print it under a pseudonym because my professors at my school have been stabbed and attacked and all of these things. But the decision to include perspectives that I didn't like was a purposeful one, because the audience isn't the pro-Palestinians or the pro-Israelis or the pro-Zionists. It's everyone who's getting news online and isn't getting a full fact, who's never lived there, who's never participated there, who never met any of these people. And that scares the crap out of me, because those are the people electing our officials. That's going to be how it moves forward. And it's just not easy. And so I thought it would be more easy to get across the finish line if real people were telling their real words. I'm sure it'll piss off some Jews too. It bothered me, some of the things that are in the book, but that only showed me that uncomfortable truths that are necessary to discuss. And if we can't do that, then we're all just doomed, because no one's listening to anyone. So I don't have any solutions. I would never want anyone to think I do. But for me, the success of the book is in the production of it and what it's done for me. And I hope other people enjoy it and read it. But I feel compelled to do something. I feel maybe it's because I have a superhero complex and I believe I can make a difference or some other nonsense. But to sit there and do nothing just wasn't working.
Well, I have to say, my book is my book.
Way better. That's what you want to say. I know. It's okay. It's okay. I accept that.
Okay. Well, I don't understand. Is it out yet or what?
No, July 1st.
July
it'll be
1st,
out.
okay.
So your book is definitely before mine.
Before, yeah. The thing that this book is different stories, obviously it's different. But when I had to choose who are the cartoonists that will do this book, so I wanted to give as biggest variety of the Israeli public, of the Israeli styles, of the Israeli, the state of mind. So everyone, and I didn't bother anybody. I mean, my contribution to this book was like a man in a pregnancy. I just said the idea, and then all the women did the hard work. There was a reporter. Did you Maya Pollack? She contacted you.
Yeah, I never talked to her. Yeah.
You
Never met her.
You never met her, yeah. But she's the one who did all the stories, and then there was the translator to French who was doing all the work. The connection with the. I just sit back and take all the credit. That's really disgusting. Okay, so. But the thing is, I choosing the artist. So I chose Koren because Koren is a genius and all that. And I chose a gay activist from Tel Aviv and a settler from the West Bank, and all the variety I could find. A young Tel Aviv hipster, very experienced, my experienced teacher from Bezalel.
A good-looking professor from Canada. No.
Maybe next disaster.
May there not be one.
So that was my point, to do a book that is very, very varied, very how do you say מגוון? No, not very
Diverse.
Diverse. Oh, how can I forget this important word? Very diverse in styles. So the message of the book, that's me, that's my story. So the message of the book basically is Israelis make great comics. That's the message of the book. Okay.
Time for one last question before we have to go get ready for the awards. Do I have one last question? I have a question. You don't need, I have a microphone. What would you like to see us talking about next year?
The comics we make about the peace in the Middle East. I mean,
Baruch Hashem.
that happened. The
Yeah, same. I mean,
Abraham Accords, the next
let's hope,
generation.
you know, it's
Yeah.
a year of healing, you know, and yeah, more healing.
Omri, what would you like to do other than be able to get out of the country so you can join us?
Well, what I would like to see next year is just nothing about conflict and war, right? That all the comics that we're making is just, I don't know, superheroes or funny things or you know,
Talking dogs.
space adventures, whatever it might be. Be nice.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you on behalf of our participants, but also on my own. You could have chosen to be with see Chris Claremont, but you came to see us. And as a Chris Claremont fan, I can tell you that's a hard decision. So thank you very much, and thank you to our wonderful panelists all the way from Tel Aviv, Omri, all the way from New York City, Koren, and from Israel, Uri.
Going back.
Thank you. He will now be they will be now at their tables taking your money and signing your books. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Laila Tov, Omri.